automotive manufacturing is...
Hello, good afternoon. It's just coming up to 12 o'clock. In a moment, we'll take you live to the Commons for Prime Minister's questions. But first, I'm joined here in our Westminster studio by our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Sam, a tricky week for the Prime Minister after the local election results?
Yeah, look at the benches in front of you. It's actually quite a packed House of Commons this week. I think some people will be coming, Jane, hoping Bloodsport is the name of the game, because, of course, over last weekend we got the results of the local elections, and it was, whatever way you cut it, pretty much a drubbing for...
And Sam, just before we go to PMQs, a bit of breaking news. Tory MP Natalie Elphicke has defected to Labour, hitting out at the broken promises of Rishi Sunak's tired and chaotic government. A punch in the stomach just before PMQs.
That's an extraordinary development. Natalie Elphicke, who was the wife of Charlie Elphicke, the former MP for Dover before her,
who had to leave under unpleasant circumstances.
Has had, I think she's had a difficult relationship with the party, but a defection today after the weekend that the Prime Minister has is incredibly bad news. No doubt the Labour Party will be making the most, and we will quite possibly be seeing her cross the floor imminently. I think this will send absolute shockwaves through the Tory benches, because the pain of a defection is one thing. A pain of a defection to Labour, you remember the last one we had was Lee Anderson going to Reform. Now we've got a Tory MP going in the other direction. It's an absolutely...
Just checking her Twitter feed, nothing on her Twitter feed as yet about this statement, but the Prime Minister is on his feet.
At last week's Prime Minister's questions, I highlighted the shocking rise in the number of teenagers trying vaping, and asked the Prime Minister if he would take decisive action to stop vape advertising on football strips. He declined to do that. Since then, I have had an exchange with the Scottish Chief Medical Officer, Professor Sir Gregor Smith, during a session of the Tobacco and Vapes Bill Committee. And he said, "Where I become very uncomfortable and I am not supportive is where the massive attraction of sports companies is used in a way that promotes behaviours that are known to be unsafe or unhealthy." Can I ask the Prime Minister again, does he still think that it is right that vape companies should sponsor football kits?
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad the Honourable Lady agrees with me and the Government that we should do more to tackle youth vaping, and that's why we are bringing forward measures in the new bill to restrict the availability and appeal of vapes to children specifically, whether that's flavours or indeed marketing. As she knows, advertising of vapes is already heavily restricted by UK regulations, including a ban on advertising on television and radio and most online. Now, we've seen football take positive voluntary action in the past on issues such as this, but I will say to her that the Government will respond to the Honourable Lady's specific amendment in the usual way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Officer in the Armed Forces. In recent weeks, Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend has announced plans to control welfare and get people back to work, to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, and pass legislation to get flights off to Rwanda. Does he agree with me that these are all issues that real people like my constituents in South East Cornwall care about, and that the Leader of the Opposition should do the right thing and back them?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is a fantastic champion for her local area. And can I also thank her daughter for her service in the armed forces? And she's right, I'm not surprised that the Labour Party don't back our plans to stop the boats. I'm not surprised they don't back our plans to get people into work and reform welfare. But I do think that they should do the right thing when it comes to the security of our nation, and that's back our plans to increase defence spending and give our brave armed forces personnel the resources they need to keep us safe.
We now come to Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, can I warmly welcome the new member for Blackpool South? After the representation that fine town has had recently, it's good to know they've got a proper champion back at last. Can I also warmly welcome the new Labour MP for Dover to these benches? Mr. Speaker, if 1 week, a Tory MP who's also a doctor says the Prime Minister can't be trusted with the NHS and joins Labour. And the next week, the Tory MP for Dover, on the front line of the small boats crisis, says the Prime Minister cannot be trusted with our borders and joins Labour. What is the point of this failed government staggering on?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I actually join him in welcoming his newest MP for Blackpool? I must say he looks a lot happier than the member who was sitting there last week. But let me also join with him. And let me join with him in congratulating all new and paying tribute to all former councillors, PCCs and mayors across the country. I hope his new ones do him as proud as I am of all of mine, Mr. Speaker. Great leaders like Andy Street, who leave behind a strong legacy of more homes, more jobs and more investment, in sharp contrast to the legacy left by the last Labour government, which was a letter joking that there was no money left.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in addition to losing 2 Tory MPs in 2 weeks, the Prime Minister's been on the receiving end of some of the biggest by-election swings in history. He's also lost 1,500 Tory councillors, half of his party's mayors, and a leadership election to a lettuce. How many more times do the public and his own MPs need to reject him before he takes the hint?
Well, Mr. Speaker, this time last year I reminded him of some advice, actually, from his own mentor, Tony Blair, who had said at the time, he can be as cocky as he likes about local elections, but come a general election, it's policy that counts, Mr. Speaker. Now, one year on from that advice, what has he managed? £28 billion of tax rises, 70 new business regulations, 30 U-turns, and a deputy leader under a police investigation.
Well, I'm surprised he brought up a police investigation. I think his record is played 1, no, actually 2, the seatbelt as well. Played 2, lost 2 in relation to police investigation. But it's the same. The public keep telling him, the voters tell him it's not good enough. Instead of listening, he keeps telling them everything's fine if only they realise his greatness. He just doesn't get it. But at least after Thursday night, Mr. Speaker, he can go to the many places that he calls home and enjoy the fruits of his success. In Southampton or Downing Street, he's got great Labour councils. At his mansion in Richmond, he can enjoy a brand new Labour mayor of North Yorkshire. And at his pad in Kensington, he can celebrate a historic 3rd term for the mayor of London. Now that he too can enjoy the benefits of this changed Labour Party, is he really still in such a hurry to get back to California?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I must say I was of course surprised to see the honourable gentleman in North Yorkshire, but probably not as surprised as he was when he realised he couldn't take the tube there, Mr. Speaker. But I can tell him that the people of North Yorkshire believe in hard work, secure borders, lower taxes, and straight-talking common sense, Mr. Speaker. They're not going to get any of that from a virtue-signalling lawyer from North London.
Well, it was great to be in Northallerton, where they just voted to reject the Prime Minister's proposition. Mr. Speaker, he's finally found something in common with the British public. No matter where he calls home, all his neighbours are backing this changed Labour Party. And they keep rejecting him because they have sussed him out. They know there's nothing behind the boasts, the gimmicks, the smug smile. He's a dodgy salesman, desperate to sell them a dud. Now, Mr. Speaker, 16 days ago, when he held a press conference claiming victory on Rwanda, he said the next few weeks will be about action. People want deeds, not words. So let's test that. How many small boat crossings have there been since he said that 16 days ago?
Mr. Speaker, actually, just before we go on to that, he talked about a changed... He talked about a changed Labour Party. That's important because he talked about a changed Labour Party. He talks about it a lot. But just this morning, and he also talked about his new mayor in London. So just this morning, we've learned that the Labour mayor in London believes, and I quote, that there is an equivalence between the brutal terrorist attack of Hamas and Israel defending itself. And let me be crystal clear, there is absolutely no equivalence between a terrorist group and a democratic state. So can I ask him now, will he take this opportunity to demonstrate that Labour Party has changed? And will he condemn those comments from the Labour mayor?
Well, I know that was the last run out before the general election, but he's getting ahead of himself in asking me questions. But Mr. Speaker, I notice he didn't even attempt to answer the question. He knows the answer. Since he claimed victory 16 days ago, there have been a staggering 2,400 small boat crossings. 2,400! That's a gimmick, not a deterrent. And those 2,400 will be added to the Tories' asylum perma backlog, which is forecast to rise to 100,000 by the end of this year. Now, the Prime Minister pretends he will remove them all to Rwanda. But Rwanda can only take a few hundred a year. At that rate, the Prime Minister's grand plan would take over 300 years to remove them all. Mr. Speaker, that's tens of thousands of people with their claims going unprocessed, who are going to be here for their entire lifetime living in hotels at the taxpayers' expense. It is absurd to call that anything other than an amnesty handed to them by the Tory party, isn't it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he had the opportunity to condemn the comments of his mayor, a mayor who said that there is an equivalence between Hamas and Israel. He did not do that, and everyone will see what that is. That is the changed Labour Party, Mr. Speaker, right there. But since I became Prime Minister, small boat crossings are down by a third. That's because we've doubled NCA funding, increased enforcement rates, closed bank accounts, deported 24,000 people, processed more claims, and, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to border control, there is a crucial difference between us. We want secure borders. He's happy with open borders.
Mr. Speaker, the whole country knows that removing less than 1% of asylum seekers isn't stopping the boats, it's granting an amnesty, a Tory amnesty. But if he thinks the voters are wrong, if he thinks his own MPs joining the Labour Party are wrong, if he thinks anyone believes any of the nonsense that he spouts, why doesn't he put it to the test and call a general election?
Mr. Speaker, he talks about removing people. This is a person who campaigned to stop the deportation of foreign national offenders, Mr. Speaker. It shows how out of touch his values are with the British people. But, Mr. Speaker, it's yet another week where we hear nothing about his plan to do anything on the issues that matter to the country. Meanwhile, we're getting on, reforming welfare and getting people into work. He opposes it. We're controlling migration, legal and illegal. He opposes it. And as we heard, Mr. Speaker, we are boosting defence spending to strengthen our country. He opposes it, and that's the difference. He snipes from the sidelines. The Conservatives are building a brighter future.
When it comes to small boat crossings, there's a lot of talk of human rights. But surely the only human right and life that matters is the life of children who are being taken across the Channel. In this respect, will the government now do the only thing that will actually be a real deterrence, and that is to arrest and detain all those who land illegally on our shores and then offshore them promptly, so that once and for all we can save lives and end this cruel and callous trade?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend is right that these crossings are incredibly dangerous and they risk people's lives. Just weeks ago, a 7-year-old girl died. attempting the crossing. And that's why, as a matter of basic compassion, we must do everything we can to break the cycle of the criminal gangs. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, you need a deterrent. That's what the National Crime Agency say. That's how we dealt with illegal migrants from Albania, because it's only by removing people who shouldn't be here that we remove the reason for them to come in the first place. And that is how we'll control our borders. And it's clear that it's only this party that not only has a plan to stop the boats, but has a plan to stop the tragic loss of life in the Channel too.
SNP Leader Stephen Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I begin by also congratulating the fantastic John Swinney on becoming Scotland's first minister. Our opponents should be careful, very careful what they wish for. Mr. Speaker, as we await the imminent Israeli incursion into Rafah, where 1.2 million people are sheltering, including 600,000 children, it has been reported that the United States has paused an arms shipment to Israel. The UK will now follow suit, won't it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman may not realise, but the UK government doesn't itself directly provide arms or ship arms to Israel. And when it comes to the situation in Rafah, I've been very clear that we are deeply concerned about a full military incursion of Rafah, given the devastating humanitarian impact. I've made that position and point specifically to Prime Minister Netanyahu whenever we've spoken, and will continue to urge all sides to focus on the negotiations at hand, to bring about a pause in the conflict, to release hostages and get more aid in.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. The confidence that Israel has shown in its military ambitions in Rafah stems from the silence which has been shown from its allies on the front benches in this place and indeed elsewhere across the world. Now, we all know that UK arms and tech is supporting Israel's activities in Gaza and will be used in any attack on Rafah. Knowing that, and the devastation which is going to occur, surely the time has come to end our complicity and to halt arms sales to Israel.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course we take our defence export responsibilities extremely seriously, and that's why we operate one of the most robust licensing control regimes anywhere in the world. We periodically review advice on Israel's commitment to international humanitarian law, and ministers always act in accordance with that advice. And that is crystal clear for the House to understand. Our position with regard to export licences following the most recent assessment is unchanged, and I know that he will join me in urging all parties to engage in the negotiations that are happening so we can see a pause in fighting, to get more aid in, hostages out, and then bring about a sustainable ceasefire to this conflict.
Martin Bickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in rural villages and on the fringes of the Grimsby-Cleethorpes urban area are very concerned about overdevelopment. They recognise that the highway infrastructure and public services are already overloaded. Could my right honourable friend consider amending planning guidance so that local plans and decisions taken by local planning authorities are not overridden by planning inspectors? And they'd be greatly encouraged if he would agree to meet with me and my colleagues from the neighbouring Gainsborough and Grimsby constituencies to discuss this further.
My honourable friend is right that sustainable development must be at the heart of the planning system, and that's why we're committed to meeting the needs for housing by building the right homes in the right places and protecting the environmental assets that matter most. The National Planning Policy Framework is clear that we should be responsive to local circumstances. I know that the relevant local plan in my honourable friend's area is due for further consultation later this year, and that he'll engage with that process, but I will happily meet with him and colleagues to discuss his situation further.
Ed Davey.
Mr. Speaker, the abuse suffered by 88-year-old Anne King at the hands of staff in her care home was captured on a hidden camera. The footage is stomach-churning. Anne died in October 2022, and it took nearly a year before the CQC launched a criminal investigation. Now Anne's children are working to protect other care home residents from being subjected to such appalling abuse. Her son came to see me as his MP to ask for my help in their campaign. So will the Prime Minister join me in backing Anne's law a proposal to include a national register to professionalise the care workforce and hold those staff who are abusive to account. And will he meet with Anne's family and myself to discuss this idea?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I first of all extend my sympathies to Anne's family for what she went through. Obviously, that's not appropriate, and I'll make sure that the department engages with him and Anne's family on the proposed law. And he's right to say we should have high standards across the care industry, and we're walking towards more investment to support our care home staff, making sure that they have training, qualification, development, and we have a regime in place that can hold everyone to account for delivering the high standards that we would all expect.
Sarah Downs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that one of the greatest things that these backbenches bring to Westminster is plain old-fashioned common sense? Yeah. And it's Derbyshire common sense. Derbyshire common sense that means that the good people of Ashbourne and surrounding villages reject the Sadiq Khan ULEZ rules and even the 20 miles an hour Welsh. Will he join with me and perhaps ask his neighbour if he will pay for the Ashbourne bypass?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know my honourable friend has been a dedicated campaigner for the Ashbourne bypass, and the government is committed to investing more in the Midlands, particularly investing every penny of the 9.6 billion from HS2 back into the local area. And she's right that we will focus on drivers and their priorities, not continue the war on motorists, which is waged by the Labour Mayor in London, but also the Labour Party in Wales, with both ULEZ and 20 mile an hour speed limits. It's this party that is unashamedly on the side of the motorist.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Our Child of the North cross-party group found that expectant mothers were terminating unwanted pregnancies as they could not afford another mouth to feed. Recent figures show infant and child death rates have increased in the most deprived areas, and 50 children have died alone in unregulated accommodation. Is this his plan for a brighter Britain in action?
Mr. Speaker, obviously what the Honourable Lady has described is tragedy. Nobody wants to see children grow up in those circumstances, and that's why I'm proud that the government has overseen a significant fall in poverty, but particularly child poverty, since 2010 through a range of measures. And I'll make sure that she is aware for her constituents of all the support that is in place, both through the Department of Health and through the Department for Work and Pensions and local authorities, to provide support to the most vulnerable families in our communities.
John Penrose.
Mr. Speaker, Weston-super-Mare is a growing town, so local health services are rightly growing too. Weston Hospital is treating more patients for a wider variety of problems than before. GP surgeries are offering thousands more appointments this year than last, and our new diagnostic centre means faster tests and treatments. But there's a fly in our NHS prescribed ointment. Dentistry isn't fixed yet. The new dental recovery plan is very welcome, but when will it mean appointments that Westonians can book?
Mr. Speaker, our dentistry recovery plan will make dental services faster, simpler and fairer for patients, funding around 2.5 billion more appointments. And I was pleased to note that access is improving in my honourable friend's area, with almost 10% more children seeing a dentist in June last year than the previous year. But we are going further. The new patient premium that was announced last year is ensuring that more NHS dentistry will be provided. And since then, at the end of January, 500 more practices have said that they are now open to new patients.
Chris Law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's now been over a month since the Parliamentary Ombudsman delivered a long-awaited report on pension injustices. Yet women born in the 1950s in my constituency of Dundee, and indeed every constituency in this House across these islands, are still waiting to hear if the UK Government will listen to these recommendations and deliver compensation. Mr. Speaker, I was proud to see the Scottish Parliament support a motion last week calling for compensation to be delivered without delay, but utterly dismayed to see members of the Conservative Party and the Labour Party abstain. So can the Prime Minister finally set out when Wasby women will receive the compensation they rightly deserve?
Mr. Speaker, I understand the strong feelings across the chamber on this topic and the desire for urgency in addressing them. However, following the Ombudsman's 5-year investigation, it is imperative that we take the time to thoroughly review the comprehensive findings that have been published. An update to the House will be provided once the report's findings have been fully considered. More broadly, we are committed to ensuring pensioners have the dignity and security in retirement that they deserve, and most recently increasing the state pension by £900 thanks to the triple lock.
Sir Philip Davis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister as appalled as I am at reports of militant civil servant, trade union, political activists seeking to find ways not to implement the Rwanda deportations? Does he agree with me that if they are not prepared to implement the will of the government, an Act of Parliament that was passed by both Houses of Parliament, that they should conclude that being in the civil service is perhaps not for them, and maybe they can look for alternative employment at other left-wing organisations that masquerade as being impartial? Maybe they could try the BBC or Channel 4 News.
Mr. Speaker, my expectation is that civil servants will continue to be committed to supporting our priority of stopping the boats and deliver in accordance with the Civil Service Code. He'll know that we made specific changes to ensure compliance with that code as we push through with our plans. But I agree with him more broadly that we are the only party that has a plan to stop the boats, and we will face down all the obstacles in our way to deliver on this crucial priority for the British people. And whoever stands in our way, whether it's the Labour Party or others, we will deliver for this country on this vital issue.
Malcolm McDonald.
Mr. Speaker, China has now hacked the data of defence personnel, the Electoral Commission, various other public institutions, and has targeted many members of this House. And yet plans by China's largest wind turbine manufacturer, Mingyang Smart Energy, to build its largest European facility right here in the UK advance at pace, with the facility set to be built in Scotland. Given widely shared concerns about the involvement of hostile states such as China in the UK's critical national energy infrastructure, does he not agree that now is the time for this project to be paused, to be reviewed by the government on national security grounds? And if not, what message does he think that sends?
Well, as I've said repeatedly, China is a country with different values to ours and is acting in a way that is increasingly authoritarian at home and assertive abroad. It's right that we take firm steps to protect ourselves against that, particularly in the area of economic security, which is why this government passed the National Security and Investment Act, precisely so that we can screen transactions without commenting on individual ones, of course, to protect this country. And we have used those powers, not least to block Chinese investment in a sensitive semiconductor company, but also to ensure that the Chinese state nuclear company had no part in the future of our nuclear power. So he can rest assured that we're alive to the challenges and have passed laws that give us the powers to protect against them.
Charlize Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 5-year-old Benedict Blythe was a lovely little boy who attended a primary school in my constituency. Sadly, however, he died of anaphylaxis, a severe allergic reaction. The coroner's inquest has not yet reported, but speaking generally, on average, 2 children in every class have a food allergy, and allergic reactions take place more in school than in any other setting outside the home. Severe allergic reactions are on the rise and can be fatal. Yet there is no explicit legal requirement for schools to have allergy medication, an allergy policy, or other recommended safeguards being made available. There is only guidance. Will the Prime Minister meet with me and Benedict's parents, Helen and Pete, so that we can discuss a way forward to ensure that children who suffer from allergies in schools can be more safe, including schools having an allergy policy, adrenaline pens, and staff who know how to use them?
Well, firstly, can I extend my sympathy to Benedict's family? It's tragic always to hear about the loss of a child, and we fully understand the seriousness of severe allergies and believe that children with medical conditions should be properly supported to enjoy a full education and be safe at school. Now, there is a legal duty on the governing body of schools to make arrangements for supporting pupils, including setting out what needs to be done, symptoms, treatment, but I will ensure that my right honourable friend gets a meeting with the Health Secretary to discuss how we could further support pupils with serious allergies.
Speller.
Yesterday, his Chancellor confirmed that it's government policy to abolish national insurance, a £46 billion annual cost, and no indication of where the money's coming from. So can the Prime Minister rule out further freezes on tax allowances or an 8p increase in income tax to pay for it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's total nonsense, and of course I rule that out. And let me just clear up. Mr. Speaker, there is no unfunded policy. What we have said is that we have a long-term ambition to keep cutting national insurance to end the unfairness of the double taxation on work. We'll make progress towards that goal in the next Parliament, just as we already have in this, by cutting national insurance by a third in 6 months, delivering a £900 tax cut, at the same time is increasing investment in the NHS and increasing the state pension. But it's increasingly clear what this reveals is that the Labour Party opposes tax cuts for working people.
Angela Richardson.
Thank you. Empowering local pharmacies is a key part of this government's plan to cut waiting lists. In Guildford, we recently lost 2 neighbouring pharmacies. But good news, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to report that by working diligently with local pharmacists, concerned residents, the Minister and the ICB, I have helped to secure a new pharmacy in Burford. Yeah. Will my right honourable friend join me in welcoming this new pharmacy, and does he agree that it is vital residents should have access to a good, efficient and above all local pharmacy?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Speaker, I care deeply about the future of our community pharmacies. I'm very pleased to hear about my honourable friend's success in securing a new pharmacy for her constituents, joining the 10,500 others across the country. And she's now right about the important role that our local pharmacies can play. That's why we're backing them with £645 million of additional funding through Pharmacy First, so that you can now go straight to your pharmacist, receive treatment for 7 of the most common ailments, saving you time and ensuring that patients get the care they need quicker and closer to home.
Mr. Speaker, last Friday, The Guardian reported major structural deficiencies at Stepping Hill Hospital in Stockport. Stepping Hill's major outpatients building, the radiology department and the critical care unit have all been condemned. In March, I met with senior officials at Stockport NHS Trust. They were very clear that a sustained lack of capital investment is the root cause of problems at my local hospital. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister believe that our hospitals, quite literally crumbling, is the price worth paying for the 14 years of successive Conservative failure?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we fully recognise the need to invest in health infrastructure across the country, including at Stepping Hill Hospital, and that's why we are currently spending around £4 billion a year for Trust to spend on necessary maintenance and repairs, on top of the £20 billion new hospital programme and the additional funding that was put aside to deal with RAC maintenance. But he talks about a legacy of the NHS. All he needs to do is look at his party's record in Wales, where people currently are experiencing the worst A&E performance and the longest wait times anywhere in Great Britain.
Ruth Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Nottingham City Council is expecting to fall short of its housing target by 6,000 new homes. Last time this happened, Rushcliffe, as a neighbouring authority, was forced to take thousands of homes on top of its own housing target, which led to huge pressures on our green spaces and public services. So can my right honourable friend reassure me and my constituents that the changes we've made to the planning system will mean that this time we will be protected from Labour's failure in Nottingham? Yeah.
Well, my honourable friend makes an important point, and while on this side of the House, the Conservatives believe in building the right homes in the right places, with local people having a say, all Labour would do is impose top-down housing targets on areas, decimating our precious countryside. And in Nottinghamshire, as she says, you can see the difference, Mr. Speaker, between the well-run Conservative County Council compared to the bankrupt Nottingham Council, which has left residents to pick up the bill from their profligacy.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Untreated sewage was pumped into English waterways for more than 3.6 million hours last year, and into the sea off Sussex beaches 3 times in the last 24 hours alone. Yet since privatisation, the water companies have been allowed to rack up debts of over £64 billion and their shareholders to pocket £78 billion in dividends. The majority of the public, including 58% of Conservative and 80% of Labour supporters, want to turf out the profiteering polluters. They want water brought back into public hands. When is he going to listen to them and end the legalised scam of privatisation?
Well, Mr. Speaker, our plans to tackle this have gone further than any other previous government. In fact, we now monitor 100% of overflows, up from just 7% under the Labour Party. We're investing a record £56 billion into our water infrastructure, and we've enshrined in law strict targets and introduced unlimited fines for water companies, holding them and their bosses to account. So it's crystal clear that the record shows that there's only one party who has a clear plan to tackle this issue for the environment, and it's the Conservative Party.
Final question, Matt Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everybody knows that Stockton is a great place with great people and a great football team. My right honourable friend recently visited the mighty Stockton town to see the incredible work that they do in the local community and heard about their promotion battle. I'm sure he'll want to join me in congratulating Mickey Dunwell and the mighty Anchors on their promotion.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it was fantastic to visit Stockton Town FC with my honourable friend, who is a brilliant champion for his local community, which I see firsthand on a weekly basis. And let me join him in congratulating everyone at the club on their well-deserved promotion, and I hope some of their good luck rubs off on Southampton in the coming weeks.
Very agree with that. That completes Prime Minister's questions.
Well, that was Prime Minister's questions for today, and we got a real surprise just at the top of it, a statement from Natalie Elphicke, who was a Conservative MP who just defected to Labour. I think we can bring you the footage of the moment that she walked across the House, and we can see some of the reaction of some of the Conservative benches on the left-hand side of your screen as she does this. You see people pointing. Somebody runs up to the Chief Whip, Simon Hart, as well, and whispers something in his ear. So clearly it took a lot of Conservatives by surprise. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, is sitting next to me watching this. Sam, this is a blow for the Prime Minister, isn't it? Make no mistake.
I mean, it's a gutter punch. A defection that was absolutely not on the cards, wasn't expected. There weren't any rumours. At about 2 minutes to 12, 2 minutes before the Prime Minister stood up for what was always going to be a blood sport of a Prime Minister's questions, to discover, with no warning at all, that the person that you're looking at the moment, Natalie Elphicke, who's been a Tory MP since 2019 for Dover, had defected, and not only defected, but defected all the way through to Labour, the principal opposition, will have hurt. And it will have hurt on a number of levels. Because when you look at Natalie Elphicke's career, you would have maybe even thought that she was somebody who'd lead a little bit more into the right of the Conservative Party, given some of her public pronouncements, given her backing for Liz Truss. And yet here you have somebody who has chosen to endorse the Labour Party and disavow the party that put her in Parliament in the strongest possible of terms.
And let's look at some of those terms. We've got an excerpt from her statement, which is pretty excoriating. She said, when I was elected in 2019, the Conservative Party occupied the centre ground of British politics. The party was about building the future and making the most of the opportunities that lay ahead for our country. Since then, many things have changed. The elected Prime Minister was ousted in a coup led by the unelected Rishi Sunak. Under Rishi Sunak, the Conservatives have become a byword for incompetence and division. The centre ground's been abandoned and key pledges of the 2019 manifesto have been ditched. Meanwhile, the Labour Party has changed out of all recognition. Since 2019, it's moved on from Jeremy Corbyn and now, under Keir Starmer, occupies the centre ground of British politics. It has accepted Brexit and its economic policies and defence policies are responsible and can be trusted. Ouch.
Yeah, and I think the little bit of that statement that you just read out that Labour will be particularly pleased to hear, or frankly, Labour Party officials probably wrote it, but to have had her endorse was the line, Labour has accepted Brexit.
Yeah.
And I think it is that sense that some of the key messages that sustained the Conservative Party in the 2019 election are now being ripped up in their face by some of the MPs who were elected on that. What she's sort of saying, if I could interpret her statement, she's sort of putting her eggs in the Boris Johnson camp. She said Boris Johnson's Conservative Party was one I could back. To me, she says that felt like a centre ground party, and where we are right now, it's descended into chaos. As we alluded to, her own political journey has taken some curves, and the backing of Liz Truss, I think, would perhaps place her in a certain place in the party. So for her to go all the way across, her argument, and it's a lengthy statement, I have to say, her argument for defecting to Labour seems to be built here on one of social justice. She feels that the Conservative Party can't deliver the kind of change, whether it's tackling homelessness, building homes, whether it's small boats. That's the foundation of her argument. We've been looking through some of her recent statements, aside from what she's put out today, and what you learn about her is that in that Dover seat, she understandably was somebody who felt that she needed to do something about the boats policy in particular, because the small boats coming from France hitting that constituency more than almost any other. But I also think it's fair to say that she felt that the government could be doing more and different things alongside Rwanda. Now, there's no public statement of her disavowing the Rwanda policy, but it is, I think, the case that she was wanting more returns agreements with France and some of the other things that the Tories haven't done that Labour are looking at. So it feels like on that absolutely key metric, she was not in complete lockstep with her party of this morning, but maybe a bit closer to our party this afternoon now.
OK, Sam, well we've got our panel of MPs here to comment on Prime Minister's questions, but slightly been overtaken by the events just before it. We've got Stephen Hammond, the Conservative MP for Wimbledon, very much got the short straw today, I think. Angela Eagle, Labour MP, Acting Shadow Employment Minister down at the end, and Christine Jardy, Liberal Democrat MP for Edinburgh West. Well, Stephen, to you first of all, on Natalie Elphicke's defection, 2 MPs in 2 weeks. Is the Conservative Party in free fall?
No, it's not in free fall, and I, like everybody else, was extraordinarily surprised. And I'm even more surprised at some of that statement. I mean, after all, if there's been someone who has done as much as anyone to drag my party away from the centre ground of British politics in the last 5 years, it's been Natalie. And Sam said she's had curves in her journey. Well, she's had, U-turns, I think, at times. If you want to find someone who was to the real right of the Conservative Party and has always been there, with the exception of housing, I'm staggered that she has made this decision. I heard his statement for the first time, like everybody else. But one of the things that will be causing surprise amongst a lot of my colleagues is some of those remarks. And, of course, we all know the fact is, unfortunately, for her, that when you defect, you're disliked by your old party and distrusted by your new. And she'll find that out fairly quickly.
She says in her statement, we need to move on from the broken promises of Rishi Sunak's tired and chaotic government. Some would say, if you look at the local election results last week, the voters agree with her.
I think the election results last week were very disappointing, and let's be honest, they were poor for us. But they were talking about some of the issues that are still confronting us and a hangover from things we've seen before in terms of the fact that cost of living crisis is still heavily in people's minds, although inflation is coming down and there is more money in people's pockets as from this April. Of course, it was a very difficult time at the last local election results. But I think there are still a number of issues that are going to come up over the next few months that mean that the election is still not a foregone conclusion.
Before we come to Andrew Egan, we've got the grab of the moment that Keir Starmer welcomed his new Labour MP. Should we just have a listen to that?
Mr Speaker, can I warmly welcome the new member for Blackpool South? After the representation that fine town has had recently, it's good to know they've got a proper champion back at last. Can I also warmly welcome the new Labour MP for Dover to these benches?
Angela, what kind of welcome will she really get? Somebody who, as you know, Stephen was saying, was sort of seen as somebody who possibly was more towards the right of the Conservative Party within the Labour Party.
Well, I think we always like sinners who repent. It's always difficult. It's difficult to say anything else. Well, I mean, if Liz Truss wanted to cross the floor to the Labour Party, I'm not quite certain that we'd give her the same welcome that we've just given to Natalie.
Is she going to have to go to confession?
I mean, Natalie said that this was a tired and chaotic government. Which is falling apart. And she also said, as you've quoted, that the Tories, that really now the Conservative Party is a byword for incompetence and division. Well, I couldn't have put that better myself. And I think that the electorate are coming to that opinion, although not one single vote has been cast in the general election yet. We've had some very encouraging results in last week's election, and we've got a government that is tired and incompetent, that keeps issuing press releases about consultations that are going to finish after we've had to have the next general election, saying they're going to do a load of stuff that they haven't done for the last 14 years. Where have they been for 14 years? They've been creating, certainly since 2019, a parliament where people will be worse off at the end of it than they were at the beginning of it, and where the tax burden, and they claim that they're a small tax party, will be higher now than it's been for the last 40 years. But the double whammy is that our public services are falling apart at the seams. We've got the NHS waiting lists the longest they've ever been. So they're a failing government, they're falling apart, they are incompetent, and I think increasingly the country wants rid of them.
Christine, you must be rubbing your hands with glee with this, because it seems, you know, we certainly saw in this last lot of elections, and potentially the general elections, it's the Conservative constituencies that you think the Lib Dems can take that you're going to focus on.
Yes, we're delighted with the election results because we beat the Conservatives for the first time in nearly 30 years. We came second in this round of results, and as you see, in the areas where we'll be focusing come the general election. But can I just say, I'm going to...
Does that mean that you've given up fighting Labour?
No, because there are seats like Sheffield Hallam where Labour are the opposition. So we will be fighting and focusing our resources in seats where we believe that we can win. And can I just say, I'm going to run off to the bookies after this and put money on who I think will be the Conservative MP defecting next Wednesday, just in time for PMQs. I've no idea at the moment, but I'm going to think about it very carefully.
Well, whoever it is, there were more rumours about who they might be than there was for today's defection.
Right now, there is no doubt that emotions are running very high inside the Conservative Party. These things are a sucker punch when they happen. Tale of two responses. We've just had the official response from the Conservative Party, which says that the people of the Dover and Deal constituency will be disappointed. We wish Natalie Elphicke well, as she has to support Labour's amnesty on migrants. So that was one response, the official response. I can give you one unofficial response from a Conservative. Let's put it no more than that. They really are taking the absolute swear word dregs, and then this person names who they think will be next. I won't name them now because we don't know. Stephen Hammond, the absolute dregs?
No, I've known Natalie for 20 years or longer. I'm very disappointed. As I say, she has always been very clear about her views, which are one of the reasons why I'm so surprised is that she's always been on the right of the Conservative Party. She was hugely critical of Keir Starmer up to only a month ago about his immigration policy and relying on the French. There's any number of tweets you're about to receive from colleagues that are going to point that out. So I'm surprised. I'm surprised and disappointed.
But you're giving us lots of surprise. You're almost sort of suggesting a certain amount of her statement being disingenuous. Then tell us, why do you think she did defect? Isn't it because she just doesn't want to associate herself with the perception, I imagine the perception, of being in a party with a Prime Minister who, quite frankly, looking at the local election results, is a loser?
I've got no idea why she defected. No, I mean, you've got her statement. You've read it out, Sam. I mean, I think the issue here is, you know, is that the reason why she's really defected? Is there other things happening? Last week there was a rumour of a deal done with Dan Poulter. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm genuinely surprised. She's not someone who you would have expected this to happen. It's not clear to me that she has ever been supportive of any of the policies that the Labour Party have ever had on immigration previously. And therefore, what is she going to gain out of it?
But however much you can pick inconsistencies, there's just the smell of death about the Conservative Party right now, isn't there?
I don't think it's the smell of death, no, Sam.
In Prime Minister's questions, Angela, we had, staying on that subject of migration, this line about the boats from Keir Starmer. 1% of people are going to be removed to Rwanda. The rest, it counts as a Tory amnesty. Is this a new line on migration that we're getting from the Labour Party?
I mean, the effect of not removing anybody, not stopping the boats, is that there are increasing numbers of people here who are in a kind of limbo where the Home Office aren't processing them in any way, because there's a law that was passed 2 years ago which said that they shouldn't be processed because they're going to end up in Rwanda. There have been over 8,000 people arrived this year in small boats so far, and the Rwanda deal is only for 300 to begin with. We don't know, and the Rwandans won't say how many more people they'll accept. But I think that Keir was right to point out that on the current speed of doing it, it would take over 300 years for these people to be sent to Rwanda. That means, in effect, they are just being left in a kind of limbo here, not able to work, not able to be processed for any asylum claims, not able to be sent back from the countries they came from, just existing. I mean, that is not a viable policy. It never has been. And therefore, I think to call that an amnesty is only a reflection of the reality, the practical reality of this ridiculous process that the government have spent so much time on. They're spending so much time on getting the Rwanda policy, this performative cruelty. They're not doing the day job in the Home Office. They're not processing the asylum seekers they have. They've got law which means they can't process the ones that come over in small boats. They don't seem to be doing anything to prevent any of the arrivals coming. It's not a viable policy.
Stephen, do you regret the fact that the Prime Minister has nailed his colours to the mast on this policy? Do you think the Rwanda policy, now where we are, and looking at the results that we saw last week, which could be seen as a public vote on that it's just not a vote winner, or that people are just not seeing it in the same way that Rishi Sunak would like people to see it?
I've always argued it should be only one part of the policy, because I think the deal we've done with Albania and others have been very successful in actually making sure that doesn't happen. I understand that the Prime Minister sees this as a key part of making sure that there is a deterrent. He sees it as part of the answer, but it can only ever be part of the answer. What we need to see is more deals like we've done with the Albanians and others, which must be a whole policy.
Another subject that also came up in Prime Minister's questions, Angela, the Prime Minister asked Keir Starmer to reiterate that there's no equivalence between a terrorist group like Hamas and a democratic state like Israel. This is after Sadiq Khan said that there should be equally strong criticism of both Israel and Hamas.
It's not quite what he said. Sadiq Khan actually said that there should be criticism of those that take innocent lives on any side of a conflict, which is not quite how the Prime Minister characterised it. And who can disagree that innocent lives shouldn't be taken in a conflict, that we want to deal with conflict, stop war, stop innocent civilians being targeted, get a ceasefire in Gaza, get the UN resolution which was passed a few weeks ago put into effect, which means more aid into Gaza, no attack on Rafah, and an immediate ceasefire. That is what we need to get. So I think
does Keir Starmer agree with Sadiq Khan? Because it seems that there's a difference between them.
Well, you would have to ask Keir Starmer But I think that what Sadiq has said has been grossly taken out of context. He was expressing empathy and sympathy for the killing of innocent civilians in any conflict on both sides, both the innocent Israelis that were killed on October the 7th and the innocent people who've been killed in Gaza as well.
But isn't there an element of confusion, which you've just highlighted there, about what the Labour Party's policy is? Rachel Reeves was asked about this again this week, that there is a concession that Labour has possibly lost some Muslim voters because of your stance.
Look, there's a great deal of
Gaza.
anger and emotion, understandably, about the horrific events that are going on in Gaza at the moment. Who can't be angry and empathise with people who are being bombed in the way that they are at the moment? We've got to check that the international organisations are available to ensure that international law is being properly effected. We've got to get aid into people who've got no food and no water to drink. And we've got to stop that attack on Rafah, which will put maybe up to 1.5 million people in severe peril. I don't think there's much disagreement about that. And I think there's a great deal of empathy in the Labour Party, not only amongst those people who represent constituencies where there are big Muslim votes, but everywhere. Everyone's horrified by what they've seen unfolding in the Middle East.
Christine, was it a big issue on the doorstep when you were out campaigning?
I think it is a big issue for a lot of people.
But it's something that people are telling their local councillors and telling their local MPs that they care about, more than perhaps housing, education.
No, I think I have to be honest and say, yes, we are all concerned, and Angela's absolutely right. Everybody is horrified by what they're seeing unfolding in Gaza, and they want an end to it. They want humanitarian aid in, and they support the idea of a ceasefire and a two-state solution generally, I find. But mostly people are concerned about the mess that the Conservative government has made of the economy. They're concerned about problems with housing. They're concerned about the state of the roads, transport, public services, and the NHS, critically the NHS. And what they see, or what they tell me when they look at Westminster, is they don't see a solution, they see more incompetence. And that's not good enough.
Sam, final thoughts from you?
Angela Eagle, I think there are questions about Natalie Elphicke's judgment. She was suspended from the Commons for a day for trying to influence judges. Are you comfortable with the judgment of your new colleague?
I mean, I think that there were 7 or 8 Conservative MPs that had written to a judge about somebody's character, thinking back about that. You can't do that under Commons rules. It's about the separation of the judicial and the legislative function. I think that, you know, that is something that shouldn't have been done. Am I comfortable? I always, as I said, welcome repenting sinners, even though I'm not remotely religious.
I think it's going to be a tricky day for Rishi Sunak after the third defection in this Parliament from the Conservative Party to Labour. We had Christian Wakeford earlier on in the Parliament, more recently Dan Poulter a couple of weeks ago, and today Natalie Elphicke, the Dover MP.
Indeed. Well, thanks very much to our panel, Stephen Hammond from the Conservatives coming in and answering those questions, Christine Jardine for the Liberal Democrats and Angela Eagle for Labour as well. Thank you very much for joining us for Prime Minister's Questions on Sky News. Lots more to come up. We're going to get all the latest on that defection in the Commons as Natalie Elphicke crosses the floor, leaving the Conservatives and moving to Labour. Stay with Sky News. Hello, you're watching Sky News Today. It's 1 o'clock. These are our headlines. Breaking news, a second Tory MP within 2 weeks defects to Labour. Natalie Elphicke crossed the floor of the Commons just before PMQs and protested what she called the broken promises of Rishi Sunak's tired and chaotic government. Also ahead, Court of Appeal judges hear arguments over whether the Nottingham attacker's sentence was unduly lenient. The families of Valdo Kalakani's victims demand true justice after he was initially spared jail and given an indefinite hospital order. The mother of murdered 16-year-old Brianna Jai tells Sky News new plans to improve internet safety for children don't go far enough. America admits it paused a weapons shipment to Israel's military over fears of a full-scale assault on Rafah as a key border crossing into Gaza is reopened. And
you swear that you will well and truly serve His Majesty King Charles in the office of First Minister of the Scottish Government.
the new SNP leader, John Swinney, is sworn in as Scotland's 7th First Minister. Hello, good afternoon. We begin with that breaking news that Rishi Sunak has lost another MP this afternoon, his second in less than a fortnight. Natalie Elphicke, who's the MP for Dover and Deal, where many of the migrants who cross the Channel end up, criticised government policy, in particular on small boats, biosecurity and housing. This was the moment that she crossed the floor of the House of Commons just as Prime Minister's questions was about to begin. You can see her walking in there. And then onto the Labour side. Just minutes earlier, she'd issued a statement saying, "When I was elected in 2019, the Conservative Party occupied the centre ground of British politics. The party was about building the future and making the most of the opportunities that lay ahead for our country. Since then, many things have changed. Under Rishi Sunak, the Conservatives have become a byword for incompetence and division. The centre ground has been abandoned and key pledges of the 2019 manifesto have been ditched. We need to move on from the broken promises of Rishi Sunak's tired and chaotic government. That's why it's time for a change. Time for a Labour government led by Keir Starmer. The general election cannot come soon enough." Well, let's bring in our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, who's here with me. Sam, a massive victory for Labour here, isn't it?
And a complete gutter punch for the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Look, Tory MPs were already turning up to today's Prime Minister's question, expecting blood sport after the disastrous results at last week's local elections, which were all counted over the weekend. Massive swings in the Blackpool South by-election, losing 9 out of the 10 mayoralties. And now this. Defections always hurt, and when it's defection to the principal opposition party, it hurts particularly. This is the third Tory MP to go from blue to red in this Parliament. The first one, Christian Wakeford, a couple of years ago. The second one, only a couple of weeks ago. That was Dan Poulter. And now, today, Natalie Elphicke. This was a tremendous surprise. Natalie Elphicke, there were no rumours that she might defect at all, and I think that the fact that she has chosen to jump to the other side of the green benches has been and is being greeted by shock by the Conservative Party. For many, she was a Tory MP on the right of the party. She backed Penny Mordaunt in one leadership election. She backed Liz Truss in another leadership election, and she has consistently taken a hard line on the on small boats, but didn't believe, as you were saying, necessarily that the government had all the answers with its Rwanda plan, which she backed, but also wanted perhaps deals with France. She represents the Dover and Deal seat. That's a very big target for Labour. But I think Labour will be particularly pleased that there you have a staunch Brexiteer. And in the statement saying Labour has accepted Brexit. That will be a big win for Keir Starmer, who's looking to reassure those Leave voters and Leave areas was something that the Labour Party did well on. Defections are a moment of high drama and they are a moment of emotion for parties. While officially the Conservative Party is wishing her well, unofficially rather less sanguine response. One person telling me that the Labour Party are taking the absolute dregs and suggesting that there might be more people to come. Asked whether or not there's a smell of death about the Conservative Party, Stephen Hammond said no, but didn't have much more to say on it.
Yes, exactly. Sam, thanks very much. Let's bring in Claire Pearsall, former Conservative advisor, who's joined us in the studio. Claire, how damaging is this for Rishi Sunak? 2 in 2 weeks.
Well, of course, it's incredibly damaging. Nobody wants to see defections over to another party ahead of a general election. But I think that this just shows the amount of disloyalty somebody like Natalie Elphicke has for her own party and for her colleagues. And it's left an incredibly bad taste. And as Sam was just alluding to, privately, Conservative MPs are walking around and wondering what on earth Natalie Elphicke has in common with the Labour Party.
So, you know, there will be some saying good riddance, presumably, reading between the lines, but Rishi Sunak needs every number he can get, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. I mean, the working majority of the House of Commons is now down to probably around about 45, which from an 80-seat majority is substantially less. But also, I think it's just the optics of an individual moving over to a party which is looking to show that it has changed, to show that it is moving with the times. And it's interesting, the seat of Dover and Deal already has a Labour candidate who has worked incredibly hard in the area. So it remains to be seen, whereas if Natalie Elphicke is going to remain as an MP, if she's going to stand down at the next election, and what is in this for her? Because I think she is looking to shore up her own position rather than that of any political party.
It's difficult for Rishi Sunak today as well, because we've got Robert Jenrick, former minister, who was out on manoeuvres talking about migration today and talking about how he has a different vision for migration and the Home Office than the Prime Minister does. And that is on top of a really damaging set of results last week in the local elections.
That's right. I mean, it's one thing after another at the moment. And it's hard to see how the Prime Minister can recapture the sense that the party is coming together when it seems to be broken into every more different faction than it was previously. But I think that this is, yes, damaging, but I think the Labour Party also needs to take a long, hard look at why they're admitting somebody who has gone against so many of their policies. When you look at immigration, as you were just mentioning, Natalie Elphicke was suggesting that Labour wanted more open borders and she wanted tougher border controls, more along the Robert Jenrick line than the Keir Starmer Labour Party line. So I'm not sure that she's going to be entirely welcome within the Parliamentary Labour Party.
Aren't the Labour Party just trying to beat the Conservatives at their own game, I suppose? If you look at what Boris Johnson did and, you know, appealing to all of these red wall voters, you know, our Labour Party flipping it on its head and saying, right, we're going to take a bit of meat from the Conservative Party and we're going to bring their voters onto our side.
But I'm not sure that that's really going to work in stories like this, because you are only looking to take an MP in an area which is heavily looking as if it will change to Labour anyway. It's not really going to dent those kind of seats. Quite interestingly, at the weekend, HuffPost revealed that there were at least 2 MPs looking to defect. So we've had 50% of that. So I think all eyes are now going to be on the Conservative Party and where the next defection comes from. But it is incredibly damaging to a party that needs to pull together.
What does Rishi Sunak need to do now to calm nerves amongst the backbenchers?
It's very difficult, and I'm sure he's not going to take any advice from me, but I think that he needs to look at the policies he's coming up with, not move too far to the right, and have something that gives hope for the country, because we are going to ask people to go to the polls and vote for us and have confidence in a government that can run a country. And if you aren't going to have policies that are coherent, you don't have a party that is coherent and pulling together, you're not going to win.
Let's just bring in Sam Coates again, our Deputy Political Editor. Just, Sam, one of the points that Claire was making about, you know, why are Labour taking this person who's fought against so many of their policies in the past? I mean, obviously something that Keir Starmer has balanced up, but is the Labour Party weakened at all by her joining, do you think?
No. Like, if the shoe was on the other foot, you would welcome a defection from Labour in a heartbeat. You absolutely loved Lisa Cameron coming over from the SNP to the Conservatives. So I think that's, quite frankly, baloney. Every party likes defections when they go their way, don't they?
Well, only when it goes their way, but Keir Starmer is going to have
all that's going on is it's not going your way, and so you're sort of inventing. But, you know, if the boot was on the other foot and it was... your argument's rubbish.
In what respect?
Well, you are suggesting it is in some way a bad thing that the Labour Party have got a defection going to them. If there is any defection going to the Conservative Party, you'd be welcoming that.
But do you not think that this is the Labour Party accepting people that are so fundamentally opposed to their own policies that they're just taking somebody just for the numbers? I mean, that doesn't really say much for their ability to run a country if all they're willing to do is just bolster their own numbers and not put their own policies ahead of it.
Did the Conservative Party accept Lisa Cameron for the numbers?
I think that was a slightly different set of circumstances, and bullying within the SNP led to her defection over to the Conservative Party, and I think her views are more aligned to the Conservative Party than Natalie's are to Labour.
Let me try the Stephen Hammond question. Do you think there's a smell of death about the Conservative Party?
I don't want to say there's a smell of death about it, but it certainly does have that end-of-days feeling, and I think that we've felt that for some time.
And isn't that the point? Isn't what's going on here not about Natalie Elphicke's views and the curious fit that they would have with the Labour Party? I completely give you that. It's that she doesn't see her party leader as a winner, and she's picking a side that is more likely to win. And that's just how politics works. She's dumping the Tory party because she doesn't think it's winning.
But then I always use the football analogy. Do you stop supporting your team because you don't think the manager's doing a good job? I certainly couldn't move from supporting Southampton over to Portsmouth. It just wouldn't happen in my lifetime.
But that's what you ask.
But
that is what you ask voters to do. That is what you ask voters to do. Politicians, one thing, but we do have people switching sides all over the place, and it's part of our political system, and it is what we expect swing voters to do.
Yes, it is what we expect them to do, and I think that we have to give them reason to do so. And there are always those who will be entrenched on one side or the other, and those floater votes in the middle are the most important that we can try and win.
OK, we're going to pause there because we have actually got some words from Natalie Elphicke. She just made a statement. Let's just listen in.
Well, in 2019, the Conservatives stood on a manifesto that was very much centre ground. But under Rishi Sunak, they've abandoned the centre ground and broken many election promises. Meanwhile, under Keir Starmer, Labour have changed. And I think that change is going to bring a much better future for our country. And that's why I'm so keen to join the Labour Party and play my part in bringing that important future forward.
Okay. In the past, you've criticised Labour's immigration policy. You've said that Labour's policy was open borders, pro-immigration. It doesn't want to stop the votes. Labour cannot be trusted on immigration. Have you changed your mind on that? And just again, have Labour offered you a peerage?
So under Rishi Sunak, he is the man who said he would stop the boats. And yet when we look at this year alone, it's record numbers of small boats arrivals. So he's not stopping the boats and he's letting the country down. Well, meanwhile, under Labour, they are clear that it is important to have defence and they want to make sure that they have good national security. So I think we should have confidence that Labour are the party who will tackle this issue of the small boats.
So just finally, then, have Labour offered you a peerage?
No. What I've said that I will do and what I've been asked to do is to contribute in the area of housing, which has been a long-standing area of experience for me. And it's absolutely vital that we build the homes the country needs, because under Rishi Sunak, we've seen house building simply collapse in this last year. And going forward, it looks like it will be another missed manifesto promise from the Conservatives, not 300,000 homes, but probably half of that number. So I'm really pleased to be able to join the Labour Party. The Labour has changed, and it will be building the homes that our country needs.
So there we have it, the words out of Natalie Elphicke's mouth. Sam?
They're the words out of Natalie Elphicke's mouth. It feels like she's saying the script written for her by Labour advisers. We were very quickly on message, I thought, in that. Look, a number of takeaways from that. First of all, I mean, she was full in the Labour Party branding. You could see the Union Jack scarf. You could see the Union Jack behind her. And
I thought a hint of a transatlantic air stewardess about the whole look.
Your words, not mine.
Not wishing to be rude, but it's just it is very British Airways of old.
Your words, not mine. A couple of factual takeaways from that as well. Look, she appeared to concede she wasn't going to contest the seat of Dover and Deal. By denying that she got a peerage, but said that her contribution was around housing. That doesn't sound like somebody. There is a Labour candidate already working in that seat, so it doesn't sound like. So it sounds like she's coming to the end of her parliamentary career, which I think will be quite an important dynamic. Yes, to embracing the fact that she's having to effectively change position on migration.
We've got a Keir Starmer grab as well. Let's just bring you his reaction.
I'm delighted to welcome Natalie Elphicke to the Labour Party. She's got a strong track record on issues such as housing. She's on the front line when it comes to the crisis of small boats. And the reason that she's given for joining the Labour Party is very, very important, because I think she speaks for very many Tory voters in saying that the Tory party has changed. It's left the centre ground. But equally, the Labour Party has changed, and we are very clearly the party of the national interest, of country first, party second, and I look forward to working with her on the mission to deliver the real change that this country desperately needs.
Are there more MPs that might be defecting?
I think there are very many Tory voters who genuinely feel that the party that they may have voted for many, many times in some cases is no longer the Tory party that they see. And I say to every Tory voter who feels that they want to be part of a national mission to change our country for the better, that the project we've built here in this Change Labour Party is a project that I hope they would feel that they could get behind.
Yes, thank you.
So Keir Starmer there. Let's re-bring in Claire Pearson, former Conservative advisor. So what did you think of Natalie Elphicke's justification for moving?
I think Sam's right that it was quite heavily scripted by the Labour spans. They've obviously given that some thought, given it to her. And Sir Keir Starmer was saying exactly what you would expect the leader of a party to say, that he's very excited by it. He's not going to say anything else. It's very scripted. It's very fortuitous on a day where there is Prime Minister's questions leading the news agenda going into the evening.
And the fact that she was a Brexiteer, that is important. He didn't reference that, did he? Which I thought was quite interesting. You know, but it was something that's in her statement and something you think, Sam, is important.
I think it is, and that kind of coastal Brexiteer disillusion with Labour is something that Keir Starmer's Labour Party wants to turn around as he looks to reach out to lots of different bits. Interestingly, there's been one acid note from a member of the Labour Party just now, Rosie Duffield, who is a Labour MP who's not always seen eye to eye with Keir Starmer. Her reaction to Keir Starmer sitting with Natalie Elphicke, because they've released pictures of that, is simply, well, at least one woman from Kent has got a meeting. And then a wink emoji on social media. So some irritation being expressed in parts of the Labour Party there. But I think overall, Labour will be absolutely thrilled that somebody who... And I think it is because Natalie Elphicke does not represent their politics that they will try and claim this as such a big win. Of course, Conservatives will express befuddlement how somebody of Natalie Elphicke's views can mesh with a Labour Party under Keir Starmer, but in some ways that's the point. You need to be able to attract people from across the spectrum, and that's why they will attempt to claim it as such a big win.
OK, Sam Coates and Claire Pearson, thank you for coming in. Thanks both very much. Now, moving on, a decision over the sentencing of the Nottingham attacker, Valdo Calacane, is expected within the next week after the Attorney General's bid to have it changed was presented to court today. Valdo Calacane was given an indefinite hospital order after admitting manslaughter by reason of diminished responsibility. Prosecutors accepted the 32-year-old's not guilty pleas to murder charges at his sentencing hearing in January after medical evidence showed he has paranoid schizophrenia. Well, Calacane fatally stabbed 19-year-old university students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, as well as 65-year-old school caretaker Ian Coates in Nottingham last June, as well as injuring other people. The barrister for the Attorney General said the court needs to consider whether a punishment element is required in Calacane's sentence.
The harm caused and the harm risked in this case to members of the public by the offender's crimes was extreme. There are no decided cases of a similar level of seriousness, and therefore the court is invited to consider whether, in the particular circumstances of this case, a penal element was required, and whether the sentencing judge erred in imposing the hospital order with restrictions that he did concurrently on each offence.
Well, let's go live to the Royal Courts of Justice. Our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt, is there for us. And Martin, the families of the young students who died were in court as well today, weren't they?
Yes, they made the point that they hadn't urged the Attorney General to bring this matter to the Court of Appeal, but they were very supportive. And they sat for the best part of an hour through this hearing. It was rather shorter than we expected, all over in perhaps 40 minutes, although, of course, it's not entirely over because we still haven't had the judge's decision. We're going to have to wait a bit longer for that. But the family sat there and they heard the Attorney General's lawyer talk about how Kalakani's culpability was low because of his mental health. That was accepted, but there were aggravating circumstances, said the Attorney General's lawyer. The level of planning and premeditation, the use of 2 weapons on his victims, not just the knife, but the van he used to ram others of his victims. And there were other people who weren't hurt, but were also put in danger by his actions. The lawyer said his culpability wasn't extinguished by his mental health impairment. Now, after this brief hearing, we heard from the families of the victims who explained that they were supporting this action, but also talked about the other battles that they are waging on behalf of their lost children. And we heard this from Sanjoy Kumar, who's the father of Grace O'Malley Kumar.
It is very, very hard for all of us to go through this process when all we should be doing is grieving, really, for our children. But we're here instead fighting for them. But we will fight. We will fight all of the organisations that failed us. And what is becoming abundantly clear is the long list of people, organisations that failed us. We have 2 police forces, Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire, that failed us. We've got a mental health trust that failed us. We've got a NHS trust that failed us. We've got the county council that failed us. How many more people do we need to add to the list of failures? And that's why what we are saying is that to join all of these investigations together, we would robustly ask for a public inquiry.
The Attorney General's arguments for a tougher sentence were countered by, objected to by the lawyer for Kalakani. He said that none of these crimes would have been committed but for Kalakani's psychosis, something he'd suffered with since 2019, he said. And that psychosis wasn't the result of drugs or alcohol or any of his client's behaviour. Before this psychosis overtook him, said Kalakani's lawyer, he was an ordinary man who even managed to put himself through university.